Hello, everybody, and welcome back to That Milan podcast. Martino Puccio, Matt Santangelo alongside you guys. We double dipped this week, obviously because of the circumstances. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel at That Milan podcast. Again, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your audio platform podcasts. Again, we appreciate all your support. So let's jump into it. If you didn't check out last episode, we basically covered everything from the sacking to the hiring. It wasn't as in depth because we were short on time. But again, you could also go back, look at my video, just chronologizing the order of which everything had happened on the weekend. So again, Semper Milan also did a great job on their podcast talking about it. I thought all these words were great. So be sure to check that out, as well as every other Milan channel that's been talking about this. And basically everyone else, because once again, Milan are at the epicenter of news in Italy, and it's once again not positive like it pretty much has been for the past 15 years. But I kind of wanted to talk about things more positively in this episode because of the hiring of Conceição. Because, Matt, I think this is still a great hire. Timing of said hire is very disappointing. I think that's probably the largest negative surrounding this, is that it's not who, it's not how, it's not with the team, it's when. It's all about when they made this decision. And I think it becomes even more frustrating. And I know some people might take some parallels. Oh, yeah, when Maldini and co hired Giampaolo, they sacked him shortly thereafter. After a terrible start, they brought in Pioli. There was some turbulence at the start of that, but it ended up being one of the best decisions they had made in 10 years. I think Conceição, to an extent, is similar to that. I think he would be a great decision after a couple of bad choices. And mind you, Matt, somehow, some way, this guy was the third option. He was the third option. They wanted Lopetegui first. It backfired. Then they went with Fonseca. That obviously backfired. And here we are with Sergio. I don't think anyone wants to get too excited off of press conferences, anything that he says and all that kind of stuff, even though I loved every single second of it. I think there's more conviction in his voice with his personality and how he is compared to Fonseca. Man management, we'll see. I think a lot of people are under the assumption that this might be a little bit cleaner. Listen, I'm going to tell you right now, and I'm sure you might agree with this and maybe not at the same level, but if yet again more players have issues with the manager, it should tell you all you guys need to know on who the problem is in that regard. But I love this hire nonetheless, Matt. I love the approach heading into this Supercoppa match. Tomorrow, as of today, we're recording prior to Atalanta and Inter facing off. So Milan, if they were to beat Juve, face the winner of that. So, again, I'm excited for it on a level. I'm not sure how you are. I know you're kind of like back and forth. It's really hard to get into that phase. But for me, mentally, I'm preparing for Milan have an opportunity to win a trophy, and that's a great opportunity. Vinny from Milan Weekly Podcast thinks Milan are going to win it, and he thinks it more in the ironic fashion that Milan are going to win a trophy. Funnily enough, I had the whole highlights of Pasalic scoring on TikTok this morning from 2016. But, dude, I know I just rambled there at the start. Couple days to let this settle in. What are your kind of vibes heading in to tomorrow and just the overall hiring? Because it still kind of is exciting, is it not? On a level, on a level.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't want to go harp on a lot of the same things we were discussing in the initial reaction video that you put out, or a lot of the things that you put out in your initial video, and then obviously the reaction that you and I did with our previous podcast, which again, guys, go check that out. That was a little bit more of a raw emotion, feeling, general, thought on the hiring in that time. Obviously, to Martino's point, we've had the opportunity to kind of let it sit a little bit, digest it. We've heard the manager himself speak. We've heard reports come out about potential formations, about certain individuals like Fikayo Tomori maybe still having a role within this team despite reports of a move to Juventus or abroad. So obviously this is being the first game under Sergio Conceição off the back of some of his comments and remarks were which I thought were encouraging. Obviously, the timing of it, to your point, is not ideal, but I think that we can complain about the timing all we want. And this is something I ended the previous podcast with, is like, what's done is done, unfortunately. So we got to just hope that we can galvanize around this new manager, this group can get results, and we can kind of change our fortunes a little bit. So that's sort of my feeling right now. I mean, I think that if we can get the initial new hire bounce with Conceição, I think that would be massive for
It's
us.
nice to kind of have that again. I
It's
don't know. It's
yeah,
funny. It's
it
not a good
is.
thing, but it's nice to kind
Yeah,
of have that in
yeah.
the back of your mind.
Especially with a guy that I think that, generally speaking, like the majority do feel good about. Whether the timing was right, again, is one other conversation to have, but they like the individual, they like the personality. A lot of the things he was saying in the press conferences were what fans are feeling, right? And they like to have a sort of reference point in a manager that they could say, okay, this guy kind of understands the levity of the situation. He understands how dire this is. And he knows that, ultimately he's going to be judged on the results that he does or does not get. So that's sort of my feeling right now. I mean, I think that, look, if he can kind of step in, make an impact, and Milan find themselves, after tomorrow, 90 minutes or 90 plus minutes from a trophy and in a cup competition that they haven't won in a while. I think 2016, you just mentioned it, but overall, like, their cup record hasn't been that great. So what better way, right, to announce yourself and introduce yourself to the Milan fans, and Serie A again as a coach, by getting a trophy, right? And doing so against some top opponents. So remember, we're not at this phase now of the competition where we're playing the minnow teams from Serie B and things like that. Like, he can not only do a lot of good for the club and for himself and for that initial bounce by getting a result, but he'd be getting a result against, if the path is this, Juventus and Atalanta or Inter. Like, that means he's
The
getting
three
results
biggest
against teams,
nemesis of
which was a concern under Fonseca in some of the matches that he coached this year against the big teams, but also previously under Stefano Pioli. So Conceição has a really good opportunity to make an instant impact and to maybe get the fans back in a favorable position, feeling good about themselves.
Yeah, I think he's just arriving in this situation where, the introductory press conferences, although for both managers, are very different in terms of the situation that they're stepping into. Fonseca was talking more about balance and doing things different in terms of tactics. And it was definitely more on the tactical side of things, where Conceição comes in and maybe it's the levity of the situation. Maybe it's just the pressure. Maybe it's just the way he is. And I think it's the way he is. And it's just about pragmatism. Ultimately, I just had edited a video on why I'm so excited about this, because and this is exactly what I was talking about, and the same thing Rui and I were sort of agreeing upon, and even Conte fell under this too, and what you wanted him is like, and he said it today in the press conference, it's about looking Juve in the eye and about going in to win. I love that shit. For me, the way this team is, the tactics are so frustrating, aggravating, and how the pieces don't really fit into the formation that they're trying. It's about winning games. It's about grinding out results. It's about putting yourselves in the best position possible in order to win. And if you're not a part of that 11 that is interested in doing that, there's the door. And it's again in this first training session. We screenshotted it. We have it on the social media account on that Milan Pod's Twitter, where I was the one who tweeted it out and said, if you don't understand the gravity of the situation, then leave. Then there's the door. If you don't understand what this means to fight for a trophy, to get back into the top four, because it's an uphill battle now for everybody. I think a lot of people's legacies are on the line, whether it comes from the owner on the way down to quite a few players here that have had some success and others who have yet to really proven themselves on a larger scale. This matters. And again, it's not going to wipe away everything that has happened in the past couple of years. I don't think it's really going to put any onus on management to kind of like have them take a step back and not feel the pressure anymore in terms of Ferlani, Zlatan, and all that. But winning a Supercoppa can change a lot. I truly do believe that momentum can shift in that sense, because in my opinion, and I understand where people are coming from. I totally understand everyone's frustrations and where they lie. I think everyone's feelings are valid regarding that and where the club is situationally. But however, if I look at the big picture and look at every single competition, one, it's an abject failure that they're not even competing for the title. I think we all know that. We can all admit that. I think it's embarrassing. However, I actually don't think this situation is as bad as a lot of people would like to think. I think on a larger scale, long term, for where we want Milan to be, it's not great because of who management is, who the owner is. However, I'm talking about this season and what objectives could still be. It's salvageable. I really do think that. I don't think top four is that far away with the way this manager likes to play. And I got to tell you, after watching that Roma match, I know some people want to look at it from the negative side of things and say, Roma had plenty of chances. They could have scored. Milan could have won that game too. I watched that back. There's a lot of lying going out there about what happened in that game. Milan created plenty. It's their usual selves that have no idea how to finish. I thought the defense was shaky too. But with that, you bring in a manager who does everything to claw out results. And that might take some time. But for me, if you're in a great position to advance in the Champions League, that's awesome. You're in a position to win a trophy this weekend. We'll see how it goes. That's great. Coppa Italia, they're still well positioned. They face Roma in the next round. I still think they have a shot in that one. To me, the Scudetto's out the window. However, I don't see a lot of these teams with the standings here, in which I'll pull them up, really, to me, and they're playing well, have this stranglehold on Milan. Preventing Milan from inching closer to the top four. Lazio, again, 8 points ahead, but they have a game in hand. Lazio aren't infallible. They're not this like mega team. I don't think anywhere from 4 to 8 within Serie A right now, Lazio, Fiorentina, Juve, Bologna, Milan, are anything scary. I think any of where these teams are currently, maybe Lazio deserves a bit more respect, but it's not me really attacking them. These are all very well could drop points. We're just about halfway through the season. An 8-point gap with one game in hand, Matt, is not crazy.
And then you got the head-to-head games against those teams.
And they already went to play Lazio at the Olimpico when, guess what? Okay, and I'm playing devil's advocate here too. Is the pressure and the negativity going to be as bad as it was at the start of the season with Fonseca and the way everything was going? I don't think it's only going to get better from here, in my opinion. Long term, you guys can think what you want, but I think this is very salvageable. And with a manager like this that demands great results and is going to be changing some things up, and we'll talk about it in a second regarding formation, because it sounds like there might be a change, something I think that you've asked for. They can do this. They can do this. And so I'm excited for it, and I think they have the right man to lead them in charge the rest of the way. Whether they support him in January, doubt it. And whether the players kind of step up, we'll see. But listen, guys, I'm not as negative on the situation. It's not the and please, I have to preface this before I let you talk again, Matt, is that I'm not defending management. I think they've been embarrassing. I think ownership has been pathetic. I think they're all cowardly with how they've handled everything and how they've used basically the manager and the players as meat shields for their failures. That's well documented. However, I'm very positive about Conceição and what he's able to do. I also do not believe that it's just some 6-month trial. I believe what Conceição is going to do from now until the end of the season is going to cement him as a manager for the next few years. I truly believe that. If you want to hop on that wave, feel free to do so. If you're very skeptical, that's fine. I get it. Milan don't really deserve your trust right now. But I think Conceição is that type of leader. He is that type of manager that has taken over in really difficult periods, like Rui told us, Matt, and come out on the other side a legend. Not saying that's the case here, but it's not all is lost, guys. Not all is lost. So yeah, your kind of thoughts on my kind of rambling there on the outlook of Milan for the rest of the year. Is it as dire? It's not great at all, but what do you think?
I think it I think it is dire. Because I think that there's fractures within this team, within this club, and I would have hoped that a new coach, or I would hope that a new coach with, Conceição's personality can fix things and amend some issues within this group and within this club and ownership and hierarchy. But again, we have to see it, right? Like, ultimately, the players can have a feeling or vibe about Conceição, and they might like a lot of the things and ideas that he presents and brings to the table. But ultimately, if Milan aren't getting results, that's going to drive the ship, because there's a lot of things, truthfully, that hinge on whether or not they can get in top four, which, again, now that's the objective. Unfortunately, it's not Scudetto, which obviously that's where you want to be, and that's the conversation you want to be having with this team.
Yeah.
But the fact that, we're on the outside looking in at the top four in a competitive, top four race, Champions League, okay, fine. Like, we're look to be in a good spot, but realistically speaking, like, the Champions League's not like a realistic goal for us to win. We just want to get as far as we can. And then you have cup play, right? So I think the first game is going to really tell us a lot. Now, financially, of course, the earnings from the Italian Super Cup are significant too. If you're someone who, puts a lot of stock into the financials, right? And what Milan has to lose if they don't get top four, if they don't win these competitions, right? Because at the end of the day, like, we're in a position that we should be able to spend more. We have really good books. The revenues look very good. We've been told this for the past couple of years, and even, is dating back to Maldini at the back end of his tenure here, right? But 1.2 million would go to the losing semifinalist. So if Milan essentially bow out here, they get 1.2 million. 5 million goes to the losing finalist, and 8 million goes to the winner. So Milan could kind of put themselves in a really good position where if they win, they're getting the trophy, they're getting that initial injection of life and new energy under new coach, and hopefully, a sign of things to come. Or they're not getting the full boat of the money. They don't look to be getting the right results, the right impact initially, which, again, like Sergio spoke on it too, like, it's dire. Like, we need to get results. We need to get them fast, right? So these fixtures pile up quickly. Milan needs to start building momentum, because they never at any point this year were able to get that momentum going and to ride a sort of positive wave. And you and I know, we've watched sports long enough where if you're able to run off, we've seen it in baseball, right? If you win 2 out of 3, 2 out of 3, 2 out of 3, and you keep piling series victories on, now all of a sudden you win 7 of 10. Now it's like, okay, like, you're in a good spot. Milan need to get into a position where, I don't care how they obtain it, they need to just get wins, because winning cures.
Yeah, winning is the ultimate elixir.
Almost.
Winning is the ultimate elixir. And
yeah,
to your point, by the way, just really back up what you're saying, the fixture list is a gauntlet. Not in terms of quality of opponents, but the amount of matches in a day span.
It's going to be
so ready for this. So we have tomorrow, the 3rd. Do you know when the Supercoppa final will be? Because I don't actually have that date in front of me. But
no, I can look it up while you're talking.
Look it up while I'm talking. But tomorrow, January 3rd, Milan play Juve. If they were to win, Matt will get you guys the day on when that happens. It could be Monday or Tuesday. But anyways, January 11th against Cagliari, the 14th against Como, the 18th against Juve in Serie A, the 22nd Champions League against Girona, 26th against Parma in Serie A, 29th Champions League against Zagreb. Then February 2nd, we go to the derby in Serie A, and then February 5th against Roma in Coppa Italia.
I think
that doesn't stop. Like, excuse the burping, but
so I think So I'm looking at. I just did a Safari look, and obviously you have Inter Atalanta today, and then you have us tomorrow. It says the final would be January 6th, Monday. Is that possible?
Yeah, I just said Monday.
Okay, because they're all. I would. I mean, just because I'm like expecting like a couple days. Usually these things.
Well, yeah. No, I mean, if you heard the other fixtures, I was kind of reading off. Everything in between is like 3 or 4 days, right? Like January 11th against Cagliari, then Tuesday, January 14th against Como, and then they play again on January 18th. These are the lesser sides that Milan have yet to do. We didn't even play Como yet this year, correct? Or we did?
I thought we did.
We did. No, it says we didn't. So that'll be the first one. I think that'll be the final one of the final match day, but it doesn't make sense why Cagliari is played first when they had already played them. That has match day 20 there. I don't understand. Either way, that's a lot of games in a short time span where players are recovering from injuries. Noah Okafor, Samuel Chukwueze are 2 players in which Milan really have to worry about with that. But we head into the Supercoppa, Matt, and we'll just pretty much jump right into it now after that whole summation of what's going on. Juve are beatable. That match between these two is absolutely terrible. I really like the way that Conceição publicly is sort of approaching this. We'll see what happens with formation. There have been rumors about 4-3-3. Because of the personnel within the side, maybe a 4-2-3-1 might not be forced. A 4-3-3, in my opinion, and I know we've had other people on that have agreed with it. That is something worth trying. You and I have discussed this so many times over the months and even last season. Steph Sartori is definitely one of those guys from Simper Milan who's backed that as well. This team is loaded with eights. Benacer is back. The balance of those three in the midfield, I think, is worth trying. And again, maybe experimentation might be one thing, but Conceição needs something in terms of familiarity with this. And to be quite honest with you, I think it's something that Milan are better off trying, because we saw what happened against Juve the last time they went out there. He's already said that he's made some changes in training. Are you anticipating a 4-3-3 formation or maybe something similar to a 4-2-3-1 lineup where midfielders are interchanging when they go on and take responsibilities? Truthfully, guys, we don't really know because this is his first match as manager. So we could see the way he values players completely different from when Fonseca or Pioli even looked at them, or how we view players. So I think that's still up in the air as to what's going to happen. I would welcome a formation change or a personnel change, because I really wouldn't be frustrated when you have three midfielders that bring in balance like that. And again, I should mention Christian Pulisic is back. We'll see if he's able to start for this one. Leao won't be available for this match, maybe available for the final. That's great. Musa is also back. He should be on the bench for this one as well. So Milan get a little bit more depth. Your kind of vibe and how you want Milan to approach this one. For me, this is a cup. You approach it in any way you think you have the best way to win. So again, if that's coming out defensive, pragmatic, that's great. If you want to go on the full frontal, then that's also great. What do you kind of want to see from Milan here outside of a win, obviously?
I mean, I want to see a formation change. I think that Milan are due for a little bit of a facelift in that sense. I'm reading a probable 11 as being, by the way, Magnon, Royal, Gabbia, Chao, Teo, Hernandez, Benacer, Fofana, and Reinders in a midfield three. Okay. And then in the attack, you have Pulisic, Morata, and Jimenez as a left winger, because you mentioned Rafael Leao is not he's not fit. And obviously with like Okafor too, like there's clear signs that like maybe
Jimenez, I thought, did well from what I saw against Roma, given the circumstances. So you okay with that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm fine with it. I mean, I think that, sometimes you need to ride that wave, right? You need to ride the player that is playing well and that does have something to prove. And I look at some of the recent performances of a guy like Jimenez, who, again, not to harp too much on it, but, preseason comments from Ibrahimovic. Jimenez was, by all accounts, going to be the backup, the deputy of Teo Hernandez, right? They didn't spend a ton of money on him, but they spent, I think, $5 million to redeem him. So the view was that, maybe he might split time between the first team and the Milan Futuro. But the fact that we had to wait this long for him to play when the fullback production or lack thereof has been so daft and below average is, again, not an indictment of some of the, mishaps on behalf of Fonseca for all the, the respect we have for him. Truth of the matter is, his view on integrating players like Jimenez, who could have made a difference with us earlier, that maybe could have helped us get results when guys like Emerson, Calabria, and Teo weren't playing good football, right? But that's neither here nor there. So I like the fact that Conceição has an understanding of, which players like are able to maybe fit in different areas. Jimenez is a fullback, but the fact that he sees like, okay, I think this guy can get to the byline. I think he could cross balls in. I think he could take guys on. I think that those things are very important. And I think what's going to be interesting too is he's had a couple days with the group to, observe and view, right? But he doesn't have the luxury of a full off season, right? To like really get a digestible feeling and sense of what players can do stuff and what players can't do certain things. So I think that based off the formation I just read out, I think it's fine. I mean, I think it's to your point, an 11 that is going out there to win. And when you're this deep into the competition, you shouldn't be rolling out a rotated 11 unless you have like a much more important fixture in Serie A or in the Champions League. You're this deep in the competition. You win 2 games, you get a cup for your club. So I think that Milan have the right approach there. Pulisic is going to be an interesting focus for me because I think, when I spoke on Sirius XM a couple days ago before the new year, they were obviously asking me, like, from the point of view of Pulisic and the U.S. men's national team, right? How does Pulisic get on with Conceição? Because Pulisic was at the focal point or at the focal point of this Milan project when Fonseca came about, right? He always spoke very highly of him, talked about how much he's going to be using him in different areas. So how does Pulisic, now with a new coach, with a different personality with that coach, how does he mix in, right? On top of the fact that he is coming back. So I think that Pulisic is going to be a very key player in this one. Juventus aren't playing well, guys. We know the form. We know that they're having their own struggles. They can't finish games, which I think is something that really works to Milan's benefit because they know that they're not going to be in a position where if they do fall behind early, now it's going to be a matter of Juventus not able to they're going to be able to defend and put numbers behind the ball. They're a team that does concede goals too, and they concede goals in ways that shows their fragility as a team. So I feel pretty good about it. Again, this is a one-off game, guys. I think that people have to look at it that way. And Fonseca was the same way when he touched upon, playing against Serie A clubs and playing in the competition versus Champions League. So I want to see more, most importantly, and then I'm done. I want to see a team that has spirit, fighting spirit, that's going out there and saying, hey, guys, like, we're going to have a traveling amount of fans for this game. People that are coming to Saudi Arabia to watch us play despite all of our issues, despite the turmoil, despite the frenzy and hysteria around this team. Fans are coming to travel. Give the fans something, a performance to be proud of under this new coach, and show the fans that we can turn a corner. Even if we don't win, I want to win. Of course I want to win. But give us a performance we can be proud of that spells a little bit of confidence for what's to come, hopefully.
Yeah, I agree. Because I think they just need something to sort of believe in and build off of it, right? Because there have been a couple really big wins this year that really weren't followed by much of anything. I think that if Milan are able to, like, for example, right, and again, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if Milan were to beat Juve here, Inter win today against Atalanta, and Milan beat Inter again, I mean, like, that's talk about narratives, talk about changing morale. That matters. I'm not saying that's going to be the case. Wouldn't shock me at all if Lautaro Martinez finally gets off to a great start of the season for himself. He's been very shaky. If you watched him and Vlahovic have really been like that. But again, we'll end up seeing how Inter handle that. For me, yeah, I agree with you. I think Milan have to come out here. They have to show a lot of fight. With Juve, there's a lot of injuries. There's a lot of, back and forth. Juve, to me, have been mediocre. I think
a lot of underperformers too, like guys who cost. Again, put this into perspective, guys. I mean, we're talking on the Milan point of view, on the Milan side of things, and they're at 8th place. Juventus are a couple spots higher in the table. We have the game in hand. They have a new coach. We had a new coach. We have another new coach. They have a bunch of new players, and we had a good amount of new players as well. They have guys that they spent 50 million on that haven't been panning out. Imagine we spent 50 million on Coop Miners and you end up being a flop and not playing really well and being banged up. People would be killing this management more than they are already. So there's a lot of pressure on Juventus as well in this match. Make no mistake about it. This isn't
absolutely. I think
Juventus that was in that 2016 Supercoppa as far as their mentality and the defensive leaders and the defensive presence of Chiellini, Bonucci, Barzagli, and of course Buffon. Like, this is a much different team. This is also a project in transition that again has shown susceptibility to conceding goals late and being very fragile when it comes to finishing their chances and killing games off. So I think that this game is going to be very close. I do think that Milan are going to get that initial reaction that we want from the new coach. It remains to be seen whether or not we get the result. But I do think that I refuse to believe that Conceição is not coming in here. The players are not going to have some sort of awakening, at least a little bit, and at least wake up and show us at least more effort, more energy, more passion that is required to play for this club and to play so deep into a competition like this where you can win a trophy and again start to change the trajectory, the narrative of your season.
Yeah. So with that, prediction time, Juve again, Douglas Luiz, Coop Miners, around 100 million for two players. That really struggled for them. It sounded like from Thiago Motta that the way the phrasing was like Koopmeiners could start from the bench, so he's not a guaranteed starter for tomorrow. Luis is, I don't even know how he lasts through January at this point for the way that's gone. But again, I ultimately think Milan will be playing in the Supercoppa final this coming Monday. I think regardless of how they end up doing it, I think momentum is going to be on Milan's side. I think Conceição is going to have them properly motivated for this. Juve, much like Milan, are sort of like a bubble. And we know Juve haven't lost in Serie A. They haven't lost to an Italian team this year. Eventually, their unsustainable play is going to catch up to them, and I think they're going to lose, and I think that's tomorrow. So, yeah, I actually have Milan winning this one 2-0. What do you think?
I go 2-1. Something tells me there's going to be a penalty in this game. I don't know for which side.
Probably,
but I think
we don't really play well enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think I literally can't remember the last time we got a penalty. Do you guys? Do you people in the comments? Do you guys remember? Like, fill me in on that. Like, it feels like this whole season has been so chaotic. I'm like, nothing has gone our way in form of like a break. Whereas a couple seasons ago we were getting penalty. It felt like every match day. But yeah, I think that Milan win 2-1, and it's tough for me to say that because in recent weeks, guys, you guys can see that I've been very negative and very just kind of realistic and being like, until they give me a reason to believe and give them confidence and to back them for a win, I can't do it. I need to see it. But I think something's got to give, right? And I'm trying to speak this into existence and say, new coach, new year, Juventus have been barely getting on by, not losing, not winning, but they're barely getting on by, and they're there. They're there for Milan. This is the opponent that
they're
Milan,
vulnerable.
They're very vulnerable. They're very vulnerable. Even last year, guys, when Locatelli scored the game winner, they weren't good in that game. Milan were better.
Weren't they up a man for like an hour?
Exactly. And I know it's a different coach, different players, but this team, this Juventus team, is fragile. They do have some fractures within this team. They have some good players in individual moments that can do the job. But I think that Milan are going to find a way to get a victory here. And I think it's a further prediction. I think it's going to another be Milan Inter in the final. And it's going to be one of those things where Sergio Conceição against a club he played for years and years ago. And you're going to have that whole talking point and that big narrative about, hey, it's first derby. It's coming quick. What does Sergio and the group do? So I'm going 2-1 in this Milan-Juventus game, and Milan play in the Supercup on Monday. Supercup final on Monday.
Yep. So we're both in agreement there. Guys, let us know your thoughts on how you think that's going to play out. So just some other news, obviously, because we are now in January, and Happy New Year to everybody, by the way. A name that has kind of been heating up a little bit. I think this has validity to it because of Milan's interest in the past with Warren Bondo of Monza. The French midfielder has been a hot topic in Serie A in terms of transfers. We have Lazio, Atalanta, and Milan all linked. Reports were saying that Bondo is holding out for Milan. I'm sure Galliani is whispering into his ear, "Go, my son." But to me, show us what the fuck you got, management. No, like, seriously, like, this, to me, it would be so insulting. Again, and they've done a great job of this. This is me kind of getting angry at management again. But they've done such a shit job in supporting everything. And I've heard murmurs and stuff from people at the club. And Saul, nothing is going to be named here on people, but from what I've heard, it's sort of this lack of not having a lack of conviction, rather, of being able to put their best foot forward and what's best for the club on the sporting side. And for example here, right? And because this decision is supposed to be made after the Supercoppa, Matt rattles off the figures of you could get 5 million. If you lose the final, you can get 8 million if you win. Okay, and then it's like, what, 1.5 if they lose tomorrow?
1.4, 1.5.
Okay. Regardless of what happens here, show some good faith in your new manager. Show some good faith in the fans and supporters, because it's also a new fiscal year, by the way, too. because you're getting money in from all these players. Make a move that pushes the team further. We haven't had it's been a few Januaries since we've seen moves that actually put this team forward. Last year, opportunistic type of deal for Terracciano. It's really cheap. There's Devis Vasquez, right? There's Solo Mete. Like, these guys aren't really the players that, push the direction forward. With Bondo here, Matt, I think there's a really solid player. This is one of the better players outside of the clubs in the top 10, I would say. And he comes with Serie A experience, which is a big plus. I know there's risk involved because of his age, but I really like the profile that's finally being linked here. I think this is something that can work, and it's the type of player that can bring some versatility to Milan. He's not this a 6 again like Milan need, but at least on the end of understanding what needs to be done in order to win. I think Bondo is that type of player, and the expenses shouldn't be too much. But again, you never know with this ownership. What are your thoughts on the link and the prospect of Bondo joining Milan?
So I do like Bondo. I think, and again, it's tough for me to speak too much on him because most of the matches I've seen him play are the ones against Milan. I've seen him in spurts, brief moments against some of the bigger clubs. When it's a Saturday or Sunday fixture and there's nothing else on, I'm like, okay, Monza's playing. We see Danny Maldini, see what's going on with him. But Bondo is a player. Like, I think that the January approach is interesting, right? Because I think that we all know that if you wait maybe 6 months and let's say he has an eruption in the second half of the season, maybe he helps Monza get out of the relegation zone. Now, the other teams are going to kind of come in. They're going to try to poach him. And there's always the risk of Premier League clubs, because Premier League clubs, and I said this in our Serie A chat on Twitter this morning, was, these Premier League clubs, are starting to understand the market a little bit better in Italy, where they know that, I don't need to spend 40, 50 million, 60 million on a certain player. They can spend maybe 20, 25, which is probably more than, domestic clubs in Italy would spend on a player at this time. Absolutely. And they can get him for a cheaper price. I mean, look at Udogie. Udogie went to Spurs. If you wait maybe another year, maybe he's worth 35 to 40. Because these clubs are going to hold out as long as they can. Udinese specifically, in the case of Udogie. But I think with the Bondo situation, it's interesting, right? Because you obviously know there's that relationship between Galliani and Monza, and obviously AC Milan, right? So I think combined with that, in that desire for Bondo to reportedly wait for Milan, it's going to be one of those things where how much is the desire by the player, the holding out by the player to wait for Milan, in many ways similar to the Fofana situation, where he was willing to wait months for Milan to get their act together to finally get that deal done. Is that something that maybe takes place and puts Milan over the edge as far as their competitors for him? Possibly. But I think that Atalanta, I was just going through Twitter just to kind of see like a general feeling, like what's the reaction around this, right? In the search page. And Bondo was one of Atalanta's targets from a couple years ago. I think this was before he kind of like became a little bit more known in Italy and all that stuff. Like they're pretty ahead of the curve, right? They're usually first when it comes to a lot of these players. But then there's also the prospect, well, do Milan maybe pivot if they can't get Bondo, if the price is too much, to Morten Frendrup from Genoa, who are always sellers at this point of the year, right? They always, regardless of their league position, they're always going to be like, yeah, you can take them 30 million or 25 million, no problem, because that's kind of how they operate. So it's going to be interesting. I think he's someone that also is going to hang around the transfer mill for Milan. But I agree with you overall. If it's not Bondo, if it's not Frendrup, I think that regardless, management need to back their coach, because if they don't back their coach now in January when the market's open, I think it's a clear signal that they're running thin as far as we're expecting you to do a job, get the players back from injury and make it work. And they're really not showing their ambition. Or you can give yourself and the fan base a little bit of I guess, confidence in the coach. And, okay, we really truly believe in this guy. We're going to get him a piece or two that he needs for the midfield, which, again, wasn't finished in the summer. Or maybe we're going to go into the attacking market. Maybe we're going to get another forward player. So I think that Milan, regardless, need to show ambition. I'm not saying they need to spend 100 million, 80 million, 60 million. But if you can come in there and get two players, maybe loan out or sell whoever you need to sell, that's excess. Fine. Maybe Origi and Ballatore. I'm just joking, guys. But That's kind of how I feel. Like if it's not Bondo, I think it has to be somebody to help put this team over the edge, to your point.
They don't understand that if they don't take action this month in the transfer market, and again, to your point, I'm not even asking for 50 million spent. I think I'm asking for 10. They fail to get creative all the time. Like how Maldini and company like Masada had creative deals. Like, okay, we could take Fikayo Tomori 6 months loan with an option at the end of that 6 months. We could at least buy ourselves some time to evaluate, see where we are fiscally, and then move forward from that position. We know we have money. We know we have record revenues. If there is a price that isn't too expensive for a player. Oh, and by the way, Atalanta are a direct competitor. They are far ahead of us. They won a competition in which we bowed out to very early in Europa League last year. At a certain point, you have to understand the gravity of this situation in which you cannot even they should do this to not even allow Bondo to go to Atalanta. Seriously, they should do this because not only does this move make sense, they have to prevent other teams from getting better. Have you noticed the strategy that's been going on and how they've been acquiring players and how they're basically gifting their rivals players? Fiorentina getting Adli above us in the standings. Again, look at Juventus with Kalulu. They're still ahead of us. We see, sure as hell have seen what has happened with Inter and gifting them free players. We have also seen, I know I'm drawing one more blank, obviously CDK. We're sitting here basically having people or clubs, go after players that should not be Milan's competitors in the grand scheme of things, just buying their players that are their targets. And they don't even hesitate. Clubs that don't even make close to the same amount of money as Milan. We're nowhere near in the great position that Milan are in when we're talking about financials. Yet they still do it. Yet Atalanta still do it, Matt. And we know how they ran. They at least know at a certain point, oh, we like this player. Moving the chips in a little bit, right? Not all the chips.
They did that with Retegui when Scamacca went down.
Retegui is you're bang on, because if you know you're not spending money for a striker and Retegui's there for what was it? It was like
22 million.
Please, for the love of Christ, you're gonna suffer more financially if you don't back the team financially. It's just the way it goes.
And Martino, the management, ownership, they've been hiding behind this facade, this false facade of red finances, the books, the revenues, all these sorts of financial buzzwords and financial phrases and things like that to, basically give themselves an out to not spend. There's nowhere to hide, guys. The information is very public. Milan have recorded the best revenues in decades, right? I think since 2004, 2006, or something like that, like almost two decades ago at this point.
Either way, yeah.
They're trending in a really good direction financially. They're doing all the things off field, commercial opportunities, marketing, partnerships, all these sorts of things. I get alerts, you get alerts. We see it every time you turn around. Milan reached a new agreement with this company, that company, so on and so forth. Management, ownership, they have nowhere to hide. This isn't like what it was under Maldini and Mazzara, where they were like, hey, guys, we got to get Champions League like at least a couple years in a row before we can start talking about like difference-making, impactful spending and lifting budgetary restrictions. There's nowhere to hide, guys. Management, ownership, there's nowhere to hide. We know where we are at financially. It's all out there. It's all public. Sempre Milan, who does a great job. Isak does a fantastic job covering the finances. There's other accounts as well. There is nowhere to hide. If they do not spend in January, it's signaling they are not truly ambitious yet again. That's it. That is all I got to say.
No, I know. Yeah, which is what I was kind of like getting at, is you're going to just make things worse. Like, say they even win Supercoppa and they don't back it, like that, you have to parlay something. You have to take risks. This whole thing of, it's always good to be frugal at times and to be conservative in finances when you're in a bad situation, especially in a country like Italy that struggles so mightily, and especially Serie A. However, Milan are not one of those instances. They're a gigantic club. They boast constantly about well, actually, we have this many fans in the United States, and we have this many fans over in these countries, and worldwide, we're one of the biggest brands, but we spend like a bunch of fucking babies. You don't spend shit. They don't do anything. There's no, sure, renewal is coming close to being done. That's fine. That's all well and dandy. Good on you guys. Who gives a shit if it's not met with helping those players that are already good? Where is it? And by the
They're also
way,
wasting their
and by
prime.
the way, we didn't even mention this part. The guy who is the manager isn't going to stand for that shit. If you don't do something, you think this guy's just going to sit back and take it, and then they'll use their out if it goes poorly for the 6 months. Okay, yeah, you could leave. Ultimately, and I'm saying this right now because I think I'll put it this way: if this Conceição and the rest of the season becomes a failure, Zlatan's gone.
Yeah.
Multiple people within that management are gone. I truly believe that. I don't think, not because Jerry wants to make that decision, not because he's going to be proactive about it. He disagrees. The amount of pressure that is going to be coming from fans, the Curva, and everyone else, media included, is going to be too much for these guys to handle. They could not handle it. Say they miss Champions League, right? Top 4 for next year, and they bow out of all these other competitions again. All their heads are going to be wanted on a pike. There's no doubt. There's no doubt that people are going to freak out. And so for their own sake, invest in January. Do what you can to further this team. They still can correct their wrongs. They're not going to get the full trust back from the fan base, but they can get some respect back.
Mm-hmm.
And they got to take action. And I think it's not necessarily Bondo, but it's just the overall ideology heading into January.
Yeah.
So we don't know. I don't know. I can't really say what's going to happen regarding this transfer. I would love it to happen. I think it would be a boost for the club. And I think just overall the vibes would be better because of that, because I think morale matters when you're getting in more talented players that are familiar with Serie A. And again, we saw that fixture list, Matt. It ain't slowing down anytime soon. So again, any other final thoughts or anything, Sant'Angelo, before we head on out?
No, I just want to see a hungry, passionate, inspired Milan. I haven't seen that in a while. I haven't seen that really. 2 matches this year? The Real Madrid game and the Inter game, right? I want to see an inspired Milan, motivated Milan to start the new year. Can I get that? I think fans are deserving of that. Can we get?
I think we will. I think a lot of people's pride and legacy is on the line at the club.
Regardless,
and that
guys,
may or may not be dramatic, but I believe
we will be here regardless anyway to record. And whether the timing of that, we don't know. But we'll be here to recap it all. If Milan come out with a piss poor performance and yet again they struggle, people are going to ask questions about this club, about this management, about this coach, who, again, obviously game 1, but people want to see immediate reaction. They want to see a response. And if they're not getting it, more of the Curva coming out and saying, we're not American, man. We want results. We want you out. So results matter. Talk is great. They can all say the same things. They can all say the great things, Sergio Conceição included. Results matter. And results against teams like Juventus also matter a little bit more, because it shows that at least there might be something to this coach and this new year, which we hope is much better than the last.
Yeah, I think we're all hoping that. And at the end of the day, we appreciate all your support. So we hope that you guys enjoy tomorrow's match. You can follow Matt everywhere at Matt_Sant'Angelo, at AC Milan Bros, that he does with his brother. Again, we are everywhere at that Milan podcast, Instagram, Spotify, Apple, YouTube here, obviously, Twitter, and TikTok. So again, we appreciate all your support. We appreciate all the podcasts as we head into 2025. Going to be very exciting. And again, you can follow me everywhere at Martino_Puccio on Instagram and at Martino Puccio everywhere else. Again, guys, thank you so much. Comment on what you think is going to happen. Comment if you want Warren Bondo to sign with Milan. Other than that, take care.